Good afternoon. Welcome to the first live Q&A episode of the Never Told to Live podcast. Anyone who's been following me for a while might remember that I used to do some live weekly Q&A sessions in the past, and it's about 18 months ago to a year ago, and had to take a bit of a break from those. But with the launch of the Never Told to Live podcast, I wanted to reintroduce these live Q&A sessions. So these Q&A sessions are a chance for you to ask me any questions that you might have as an older adult who's looking to get started with strength training. Now, for anyone who's not familiar, my name is Chris and I'm a physiotherapist, and I very much work with people at the beginning stages of their strength training journey. Now, if you have any questions about more advanced strategies about how to get a personal best, you've been working out for a while, you're looking towards a powerlifting competition, it's probably not the place for you. But if you are very much at the start of your journey, you've not lifted yet, done any resistance training, and you just want a bit of advice on how to get started, or you've been doing it for a little bit but you're nervous about an injury, you don't know how to progress, then again, this is a perfect place for you. If you are watching this live on YouTube, you have the ability to ask me questions live as we're watching. So you can use the chat feature on YouTube and I'll be able to answer those hopefully as we go through. If I don't feel I can answer your question, I will still acknowledge your question. I'll either go away and do a bit more research and I will answer that in another month's Q&A session. If not, I will signpost you in the best direction or resources you can look at. If you're not watching live, but you actually found this after the fact, and so this is being recorded live on Wednesday at 12 o'clock. So all future ones will be the first Wednesday of the month at 12 o'clock London time. So if you're watching this later on, you can still leave a question. So if you find the comments under the video, leave your question and I will check back regularly. I'll either give you an answer in the comments, but I will most likely include that in next month's Q&A session. And then you might be listening to this as an audio podcast listener. So this is going out live on YouTube, but it will also, the audio will be sent out to all the major podcast players. So if you're listening to your podcast normally on Apple or Amazon Music, Spotify, Stitcher, etc., in the next day or two, the audio will appear there. So again, if you found yourself listening to that now, you've clearly missed the live component of this. But you can still send me your questions. Email is your best option. So send me an email at chris@nevertoldtolive.com and I'll be able to answer any questions you have there. As I mentioned, this is the launch day of my brand new podcast, the Never Told to Live podcast. I am really excited to be able to announce that it's finally here. I have launched with 3 episodes that I just wanted to quickly discuss. They are available now on all the podcast players and on YouTube as well. So I've linked to them in the description below. But the first episode that we have is a little bit of an introduction into why I started Never Told to Lift and how it's naturally evolved over the years. A little bit of background on myself. And then really trying to delve into why we should start strength training, why I think it's so important and why I'm so passionate about it. And it just kind of expands on that a little bit, particularly what happens if we don't strength train and what happens if we lose muscle strength as we get older, some of the consequences that might have. And hopefully that will help to inspire you to maybe turn things around and start if you haven't already. Then we go into how do we actually build muscle strength? What is muscle strength? And it clarifies some of the basic theory that you know or you'll need to know in order to build strength. And when I say basic theory, it's also really important theory, but it's not too complex once you understand the basics. But I also talk about some of the common mistakes that people make when they are trying to get started with strength training and they don't always get the success or see the outcomes they were hoping for. So it helps you avoid some of those mistakes that other people I've seen have made. So again, that is episode 2. So those 2 are solo episodes where it's just me talking to the microphone or to the camera. But the third one is the one that I'm really excited about. I think is the one that's going to be the most popular and you're going to get the most sort of value from. is an interview that I had with Katrina Courtney. So Katrina is a nutritionist, a sports nutritionist, and she's got a particular interest in working with older adults, particularly those having gone through the menopause or going through menopause. And she was highly recommended to me by a menopause specialist when I was searching for someone to come and talk about nutrition on the podcast. So we had an amazing, really in-depth discussion. It's about an hour to an hour and 15 minutes long. We talked everything from protein. So how much protein should we have? What types of protein? Should it be protein shakes? Should it be in the diet? What the dosages are, etc. So we go into depth on that. We talk about supplements in quite a lot of detail. So things like creatine, collagen, omega-3, vitamin D, etc. So I kind of she helps sort of simplify some of the noise that's out there around all of those types of things. And then also about timing of eating, sort of a bit like intermittent fasting, or eat when we should eat in relation to our workouts. So again, really in depth, really helpful. I learned a lot from it, and I'm sure you will too. So again, the links to that are in the description below. And then the last episode, or brings me on to, is this live Q&A. So this will be episode number 4 of the podcast. So this is live now, and the audio will go out tomorrow. And as a reminder, if you're just coming onto the call now, if you do have any questions and you're watching live, use the chat feature and I'll be able to answer these live. And then before we get into the first question that I have prepared, or that was sent in by email this week, is, as a new podcast, early reviews and ratings are so helpful, and I would really appreciate it if you had the time to leave a review or rating, particularly if it's on Apple Podcasts, because that might help to get me included in the new and noteworthy section. And if you can get in there, that will push this out to more people. And between us, if we can really help to get more people started with strength training, and then it's only going to be a positive. So thanks in advance for that. So to start with, the first question that came in this week was, how many days a week should I be working out? And again, it sounds like a cop-out, but it depends. There are various ways of looking at this. If we go back to the fact I'm going to look at this from a beginner standpoint as someone who's just starting, the question is, what is the minimal effective dose that I need to do in order to be able to build muscle strength, versus what is the amount I need to do for the best possible outcome, because that's going to look very different. So what's the least I can do and still get some benefits from, is how most beginners are looking at this. Because if you're just getting started now with strength training, it's probably because you haven't had a particular interest in it in the past, and it's something you feel you should do rather than you want to do. So for that, we kind of need to look at the World Health Organization's physical activity guidelines. So they recommend that adults should be doing 2 sessions of muscle strengthening per week. And that's kind of in addition to the number of minutes of activity they recommend as well. So for anyone who doesn't know, that's 150 minutes of moderate intensity activity or 75 minutes of vigorous intensity activity. So the difference there is the vigorous is you're so out of breath that you would struggle to say more than a few words together in a sentence, where moderate intensity activity, you're out of breath, but you can still have a conversation with someone if you wanted to. The good news is the muscle strengthening often does get you out of breath, so that is then included, your minutes of doing that is included in that. But yeah, the 2 sessions of muscle strengthening per week is the recommended guidelines for adults aged 18 to 65. There is actually a separate set of guidelines for adults aged 65 and over. And the difference in those guidelines compared to the under 65s is they actually recommend we should be doing 3 sessions of muscle strengthening per week. So they recognize the fact that if you're not actively trying to build muscle strength, then you will be losing it. And therefore, it's even more important you have to work harder to get the muscle strength and maintain it. So 3 sessions is ideal. 2 sessions for a lot of people will still be sufficient even if you're over 65. And if you are over 65 and you're just thinking of starting and you haven't really had any experience in the past and you haven't done the regular exercise, then I would suggest not jumping straight in at 3 sessions per week. I would jump in at 2 sessions a week of muscle strengthening. Not because I think by doing 3 you increase your risk of injury, because we should still be doing this the right way. Whatever we're doing, we should gradually increase. So initially just body weight, get your confidence with the movements, and then gradually add weight, and then work up very slowly and progressively so that we give the body plenty of time to adapt. The reason I suggest that you jump in at 2 rather than 3 is that if you haven't got the routine of turning up and doing exercise each week, going from 0 to 3 per week might seem achievable in the first 2 or 3 weeks, but when that initial enthusiasm wanes, it's going to be a lot harder to maintain that 3 if it's something that's not an established routine to you. So I'd much rather you go in at 2, achieve that for a lot longer period of time, and then feel like you can then have the desire to add another session on afterwards. And going from 2 to 3 will be a lot easier than going from 0 to 3. But yeah, if you're just getting started, 2 to 3 is fine. If you're a lot more experienced and you're looking for more results and you've already got kind of the addiction to the strength training and the benefits it provides, then there's nothing to stop you doing more. If you are doing more, you might want to think about how you organize your sessions a little bit more, and rather than doing full body sessions every time, you might need to split it into leg day, push day, pull day, etc. So each muscle group gets a bit of a rest the next day, but you can still go to the gym the next day and just work something else. So while the legs are getting a rest, your arms are starting to get worked out, so the legs can be fresh again for their next one, say that 2 or 3 days later. And another follow-up question I often get from this is, how long should a session of muscle strengthening be? I would normally say ballpark, if you're just starting, aim for half an hour. And that's 2 sessions of 30 minutes per week. Some of you, that might not be achievable. Some people really suffer with chronic fatigue, particularly after menopause, and you find that if you do half an hour, you just feel wiped out and you're not really able to function the next day. So you might want to do shorter sessions of only 15 minutes where you're doing 1 or 2 exercises. But if that's the case, you probably then do need to try and fit another session in per week for the fact that you're only doing a shorter session in there. But I think we've covered that in enough detail there. So let's move on. And actually, if you are someone who is very new to strength training, you are unsure where to start, then I just wanted to kind of point out a resource that I've got. It's a completely free sort of masterclass that I offer, or sort of webinar. So it's a kind of pre-recorded video that you can find that will guide you through all the theory that you need to be able to start your first exercise program that is going to progress into a strengthening program. That, like I say, it's about an hour long. It will just nicely guide you through and leave you with everything you need to be able to start there. It does go on to mention the course that I have that you might be interested in, but even if you're not interested in progressing and delving into that course, you're still going to get a lot from that and feel confident enough to start. So that is nevertoldtolift.com/masterclass. If not, have a look in the description below and you'll find that. And if you're listening to this on audio, then all these links will be in the show notes of the episode. And just a reminder, if you are watching this live, then please do leave the chat feature if you have any questions that you wanted me to answer. Now, the next question that came in this week was from someone who is relatively new to strength training. They're within their first year of strength training. They're doing it from home with equipment they've got with dumbbells. And they're just a bit curious into how heavy might the weights I lift be in the future if I keep progressing. And I think the aim or the point of the question was to find out what equipment he might need in the future, because he's nearing the end of the range or the available weight he's got with the dumbbells he's got. Now, the progression you make in, say, the first 6 months of strength training won't necessarily be matched at the same rate in the next 6 months or a year or two down the line, the initial gains you make tend to be a lot quicker and they tend to plateau off a little bit. So in the very early stages, in the first sort of few months, you often find you feel a lot stronger, but physiologically your muscles haven't changed yet. It takes about 3 months of consistent changes for your muscles to actually develop and be stronger. The strength that you feel, or the increase in strength that you feel in those early stages, are because your brain is working out the most efficient way of using the muscle strength that you've already got. And that can happen quite quickly, and it happens sort of through repetition, just building confidence in those movements. But actually you feel a lot stronger very quickly. So that's quite a steep progression curve, and you see the weights go up quite quickly. And like I say, then once you get to a point where that's maximized, you have to then wait for the muscles to get stronger, and that tends to be a lot slower progress. And then the more progressed you get with it, the longer it takes to see those progressions. So it does hit this point, because I think he said in the email that he was wondering that, will he always be adding weight into the future, and will it be just a never-ending increase in weight? Then to a certain point that's true, but again, not at the rate the first year has been. To try and give a bit of an idea about how much weight you could expect to lift in the future, I generally say, unless there's any major restriction that you have, or injury or any kind of medical condition, most people, including older adults and people in their 70s and beyond, can aspire to lift their body weight. So with a deadlift and a squat, you could lift, so if you weigh 70 kilograms, you could lift the bar weighing 70 kilograms off the floor up into standing, and then lower back down to the floor. Or if a squat, you could do a bar on your back and you could squat down, maybe not to full depth depending on what your knees are like, but you could squat down and back up again at least once fairly comfortably with your body weight, with those 70 kilograms on the back again. Upper body doesn't tend to be quite as much, but again, if you can aim for certain things like bench press or shoulder press, depending on your shoulder mobility, aiming for half your body weight for at least one repetition is a good aspiration to be able to work towards. Again, there's no rush to get to that point. We want to make sure we do it slowly, progressively, and give the body time to adapt. But that is a nice aim. So again, that gives you a bit of an idea, depending on your body weight, on how much weight you might need. At home, this does become a little bit more difficult, because most people at home tend to use dumbbells over barbells. So whilst your legs might have the ability to lift that 70 kilograms once, your grip strength in your hands to hold two, say 35 kilogram dumbbells is going to be limited, and you might find that gives up before your legs do. So there might be a point where your equipment available to you is a limiting factor. And a lot of people, so there's a lot of people I work with on the online course that I've got, Stronger for Life, they come into it starting from home. I think pretty much everyone has started from home who's done it. And then they build their confidence with everything at home, maximize what they've already got. And then two branches tend to appear. Is one, you then get more advanced equipment at home. So one of the members, Mike, for his birthday, his family clubbed together and got him a squat rack and Olympic bar to go in his garage, and he was able to progress and get to, he did amazingly well. He got above 100 kilograms doing everything from home without ever stepping foot in a gym. Whereas a few of the other members, they actually made the decision that rather than get more at home, they would just rather join a gym. And because they're already familiar with all the exercises, they felt confident with them, all they had to do was change the environment they did with them into the gym. And it wasn't that everything in the new was all new at once. It was just the environment was new. They just did the same routine that they've done confidently at home in there. And then they had more equipment available to them and they could lift from there. So they say this person asking the question was very much, what weight might I use in the future? And I think there'll probably become a point where you might decide that actually if you've got addicted to how you feel after strength training and how much better you feel, and you want to continue and advance and get towards those higher weights of your body weight, a gym might be a better option. Because the other option, the benefit of a gym, is you've got other equipment in there, such as the fixed machines. So if you're really trying to push to the higher extremes when you've prepared your body for it, you can use a fixed machine like a leg press, where you are sat down and pushing that weight without worrying about balance or worrying about what happens if I go for it and I can't get back up again, because you can just get out of it really safely and easily. Whereas a squat with a bar on your back, if you get down, sometimes it's difficult, and there are safety mechanisms in place at a gym that you can catch the bar. But again, if you're at home, that becomes even more difficult. So gyms might be the thing that you aspire to do later, but it's definitely not the place that you have to start. You can start from home, and you can progress from home to a certain point and keep building some strength. But yeah, hopefully that's answered that question there. If there are any follow-up questions from it, then again, feel free to email me back in again. And actually, the same person had a second question. They were talking about, now that the weight has increased with the dumbbells that they're using, as they're feeling more confident, they're losing a bit of confidence, not in the exercise itself, but in how to put the dumbbells down safely after having finished the exercise. So there were two examples they gave us. One was a Romanian deadlift. So for anyone who doesn't know, Romanian deadlift is that act of hip hinging. So you're starting with the weights in your hands, sort of waist level, and you're pushing your bum back, hinging at the hips. Your hands go about level with your knees, and then you drive back up again, bringing the weight back to your hips. That bit is a shallow range of motion, but to then get the weights back down to the floor, or off the floor in the first place when you're feeling a bit fatigued, he feared that he might bend his back and then cause himself an injury doing that. And the other one was during a bench press, is once you finish the bench press, how do you then get the weights down to the floor safely? And that one's a little bit more complex, or it's slightly harder to come up with a better solution. But for the Romania deadlift one, actually just starting with the weights on a surface that is higher up already. So if you have a bench at home, you could put the weights on the bench to begin with. So you might put both hands to put one on, both hands to put the other one on, and then you can grab the dumbbells from that height, and you've only got to come up a little bit, finish your workout, and then you just step forwards again. You only have to bend down a little bit, which is still within the range of the Romania deadlift that you're doing, and put them down without actually having to bend down to the floor to get them. The one thing I would say about that is you have to just be careful, depending on the shape of the dumbbells you're using, that they're not going to roll off the surface and end up landing on a foot or something else. So a bench tends to be better because it's slightly cushioned and it sinks into the bench slightly. A harder surface, it's increased its chance to roll. But again, you can be careful with it if you just plan in advance. And be careful on how you put them down. But that is a solution I'd normally use. And for example, in the gym, I tend to teach the Romanian deadlift, sort of the Romanian deadlift with a bar. And rather than ask people to pick that bar on and off the floor to get into the start position, I set the bar up on some hooks on the squat rack. So they are lifting it from their kind of mid-thigh position, lifting it up a few inches, stepping back. They can do their repetitions, step forwards again, put it back on again. So again, that tends to be an even safer option because the hooks there's no chance of it rolling off the hooks, whereas a dumbbell could roll away off the surface like we talked about. So again, that's another example where the gym could be a better option into the future. Then the bench press, again, a little bit more difficult, particularly with dumbbells. So doing it with dumbbells tends to be safer in one sense, because if you're doing it from home, whereas a bar, as you get lower down, if you can't get it back up again, that bar is then just resting on your chest. And it's very difficult to get out of that position, particularly if it's quite heavy. You either have to kind of roll it down your body, which can then put a lot of pressure on different areas of your ribs and your hips, and is very uncomfortable. Or it can go the other way, and then it risks your airway. So dumbbells become a better option because there's nothing kind of in between the dumbbells, and you can sort of just drop them to the side if needed. But if you're trying to put them down slowly and carefully, it can be quite awkward because it's quite a distance to the floor. And if you're trying to come back and you're twisting your arm out in an awkward angle and it's quite heavy, that risks flaring up the shoulder or worse, causing some kind of dislocation. So a lot of people tend to bring them in, and if you've got the ability to, you can sit up, or sometimes I bring my knees to my chest and then create a bit of forward momentum to drive myself forwards. And then once I'm sat up, it's easier to kind of put my arm down by my side and lower that down to the floor. You can sometimes position another surface in a nearby fashion so that you can lower it down to the surface. So again, you're not going all the way down to the floor. You're just dropping it to that surface, which is just to the side of you. But it's sometimes hard to find something that is the exact height you need, and you don't want it getting in the way of your elbows when you're actually performing the exercise. So that can be a bit trickier. Again, in the gym, or if you're using a bar with a squat rack, then it's easier. Once you've finished, you can just bring the bar back over and rest it back onto the hooks. And if you're worried about getting stuck at the bottom, you can often set up some safety mechanisms that they can put where these arms that come out of the squat rack that catch the bar just above your chest. So then it gives you time to get out, or time to get a member of staff or someone else in the gym to come and help you lift that bar back up again. But in terms of the dumbbells, like I say, it's a little bit trickier. But actually, if anyone else is watching this at any point and you've got any solutions that you use, or the best way you find to put dumbbells down, then please either put that in the chat or leave that in the comments below. I'd love to hear what strategies you use with the chest press and with the dumbbells there. And equally, again, if you are watching this live, please do leave a question in the chat if you have anything you want me to help with. But for now, I've just got one more question that I had prepared that came in by email this week. So we'll go through that, and then it might be the last question. If there's any more that come through, then we'll cover those as well. So the last question I had was from someone asking, when do I recommend that someone use a lifting belt? Now, for anyone who doesn't know, a lifting belt is like a leather belt. It's not narrow like a normal belt for trousers. It's quite a tall belt that bridges the kind of gap between the arch of the pelvis and the bottom of the ribs, around that height. So it goes round. You do it quite tightly, and people often wear them for squats, deadlifts, sometimes if they're doing shoulder press above. What they're generally designed for, or they're used for, is they create this external pressure around the abdomen, which makes it easier for you to brace internally and create this intra-abdominal pressure, because you're pushing against this fixed belt that helps, let's say, create this pressure that helps give you more support for your core as you're doing those heavy exercises. Now, people tend to use them at the higher end of their ability level. So they're trying to reach maybe their 1 rep max, and they're trying to increase the weight that they did on their previous personal best. So it's for people that are often working within 80% of their maximal effort that they know they can do. Often people are towards the end where they might be considering powerlifting competitions and things like that. So I'm going to put this caveat back on that I work with people very much at the beginning stages of lifting. I myself have not done powerlifting and competitively or anything along those lines, so I've not used one myself. So I'll give my take on it, but it's not necessarily the right take depending on the level you're at, because the person who sent the email in didn't really say what level they were, just wanted to know when they might consider it or what my views on it were. So what I tend to suggest is that for anyone who's just getting started, they're just looking to build the confidence with the movement patterns. Then they're looking to add some confidence of doing those exercises with some resistance, getting used to get to some muscular fatigue, and then increasing the weight from there. And again, most people tend to get to the point of maximum with myself where they might consider lifting their body weight a few times, but not many people kind of go beyond that with myself. So I rather get people get used to the feeling of their body and what it feels like to do those exercises without the belt, and see if we can build the core muscles through the exercises without the support or without the psychological support of needing that brace or belt. However, they do have benefits other than just the intra-abdominal pressure that it helps create. Sometimes having some kind of support and pressure around a part of the body, so obviously here it's the abdomen, sometimes it's the same with neoprene knee supports. The knee support doesn't stop the knee from moving. It doesn't brace it or stop it going into a bad position. Often it's the act of having that pressure, that sleeve around that part of the body that creates what we call this tactile feedback. So you can feel your skin moving around the knee support or the belt, or you can have just any lumbar support. And often once you start to feel that reminds you to change position again subconsciously without really having to think about it. And it stops you from getting then into position before your knee starts to hurt or before your back starts to hurt. So if you didn't have the support, sometimes you end up finding that by the time you've realised you've gone slightly too far, it's too late and you flared something up. And actually having that tactile feedback of the support around you, actually you realise you've stopped just before it gets to that point and you don't flare it up, and you still manage to build the strength that we were looking for in the range of motion you've got available to you depending on your pain levels. So for people who've already got some level of pain or discomfort, the supports, again, I don't tend to jump in straight at a lifting belt, but sometimes just a lumbar support when they're doing exercises with me, it can be really beneficial. So you've got that element that is really helpful, and that's where I'd look at it mostly at for beginners, particularly starting later on in life. But if you are developing into that higher end, then a lifting belt is something that you could consider. But again, by no means is it something that's completely necessary either. And again, I don't tend to work with a lot of people at that higher level. I did do a bit of research on this before, and I put a link in the description of this video of someone who created a really nice blog of her research into it. She asked a lot of coaches, powerlifting coaches, when they would suggest people start to use it, what exercises they might use it with, what weight or percentage of their maximum they might start to use it with, what the pros and cons are. So that link is in the description below, or if you're listening to this on audio, then that is in the show notes as well. So do check that out there. But as I say, hopefully that has covered your question and given you a little bit, that insight has been useful to you in terms of whether you're considering using one or not. If there are any follow-ups for questions from anyone related to that, please do email me or leave that in the comments. But for now, I think that is the last question. So again, if anyone is watching live and wants to, this is your last call to send a question in. Whilst you're doing that, I'm just going to remind you of the free masterclass that is available to anyone who is looking for those first few steps in their journey of strength training. So it's nevertooldtolift.com/masterclass. And you can find all the information there, and that is about an hour long, and just will help you with your confidence in getting going. Other thing you might be interested in is the Never Told to Lift ebook. So that is available through the website. So it's nevertoldtolift.com/ebook. Or if you don't like the idea of reading on a screen, you can find the paperback version of that on Amazon. Just search Never Told to Lift there and you'll find that there. And then just before I go, one last plea for if you have listened to any of the other episodes and found any value from them, again, those reviews this early on, say on day one of the podcast launch, is so helpful and will really help to spread this out to more people. So I would really appreciate it if you had the time just to, either if it's just a rating, if you could leave a little review with it, that would be even better. But for now, I will leave you to it. So next month, it will be on the first Wednesday of the month at 12 o'clock London time, and we will continue with these. So any questions that you want for that one, please do comment below or send me an email. So it's chris@nevertoldtolift.com. But for now, I hope you have a good afternoon, and I'll see you next time.